Well, my mom is Danish.
Yeah. I mean, you stand there. You're kind of behind me down in that corner. I checked it out. They just didn't have quite much room. I feel like there's a little bit more. Yeah, I know. The sweat drops.
Maybe not scared of precipitation on like what you do on Tuesday.
You look very weird.
That's such a good Thanksgiving, yeah. It's almost too good, you know, like I've done too much work, yeah. It's just quiet.
That's why the back is not good.
The one's going out. And I feel so bad.
Yeah, that's bad.
That's kind of
Yeah,
my son's 15 months and he's retired for law.
Really?
Yeah, he calls my mom Gaga, which makes me laugh. Lane Kiffin saga.
On the what saga?
Lane Kiffin saga.
I don't actually know. I don't know what that is.
Amazing. Yeah, it's not very helpful.
No, I don't follow that.
Before Geo,
Why would happen? Oh, I saw like the tweet about it, but I was very out of the woods.
I don't know what. I guess he was on his way out.
that's a yeah, pretty much.
Because I was eating the one that they bought us. It was like some weird transitional phase where like I was definitely still eating.
Like
so,
Money.
as far as I
But he
know, he
laughed
may have traded
like
when he was
like one of them like is draggers.
I have no idea.
Walk around with the point of like pull this
Oh wow. Had it been speculation that he was going to go.
It's Tom. He's a Tom.
Is it so?
Well, maybe not now.
Right. And it will be again.
Pretty much, yeah. Athletic director gave an ultimatum, so like you have to do that.
I mean, the worst of it might be.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like he makes the announcement the next day. As the team is getting ready for the playoffs, he's had the best season in school history.
And now he's just like,
He's looking for the archive. He's doing it and like
I'm just seeing if he's going to say that's really bright, and he for sure is going to say that's super
Not as
bright.
bright as the time I was playing in public. That one time, you never know.
it's like, I didn't want to see about his friends going to a couple of like,
One time it was so bright, we complained.
it was really bright.
It was really bright.
Classic.
This one,
How long had he been at
5 years or so.
Okay. Is that a long time?
well, I think they can't.
Is that par for the course?
Well, for him, he's
Well,
never ran into a
it's
long
really for them, but then
Okay.
the convenience.
Yeah. I know, that's big.
Another thing that I've been watching that I unfortunately didn't watch that I still sort of getting over is our awful overtime loss against Denver.
Keep losing at this point.
We'll get a better job, I know, but it's just like
You need to get younger. So you
we
like
the
you guys
I
have
know.
you guys have to hit it hard in the draft.
Yeah, we have a really old line of players.
Is it just the defense or is it like the whole? Yeah, well, like Laramie Tunks in his
I
30s.
thought the median age was like in like 32 or something for our team. I thought it was old, like entire Joe Webb.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you have to.
Like our offensive
Half forward. He's there for 6 seasons.
Yeah.
Joe Wade's got to
2 weeks on. It was coming.
You know, when you laid it out for me, I was kind of like, yeah, this is not.
No, it's the good thing. She was like, I don't think I live in this house. Like, she was like, didn't think I was like this stupid. And she was like, I don't think you meant long term. And like, I don't know if that was an excuse or like that was really.
That was an excuse. That was an excuse.
I was like, really? That's the thing.
She was trying to
That's right.
She was looking for an exit strategy.
Yeah, that's right. But what do you get?
They're kind of late. Who do you think they are, Joe Biden?
I'm not shocked.
Zach.
Something.
I am not.
Yes. They really did. Ventilation was pretty key. It turned out to be a sweater. I wasn't at that. The people get it from there. Everyone probably already. These days. It wasn't dumb. The election. Yes. Was it when the results weren't officially set? They were. I just can't remember. It was like I was out covering election stuff, but not this. I think I was taking a random protest or something. I can't remember. I was outside. That's all. It was like pretty happy guess.
Campaign trail stuff?
Not that year. I did last year, or whenever the last year. That year I did. I think maybe a little bit like regionally, like.
Showtime.
Yes.
So she should be first. OB3 needs to be on this side. Okay. I think there's probably room for two.
We can.
Should we try to short in three?
Just have to speak all
I don't think we would do that.
Maybe we were 10 upstairs. And he was like, can we fit all 10? And I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah, we'll just have to hold up to
This is gonna be fun. Here, you just confirm for me, I think it was fine.
Almost not
Well,
enough.
they no longer call it the big beautiful bill, and they just call it the way you give these tax guys. That's what they're calling it now. Like,
Well,
it's like we can't they don't want us to detonate it. I'm gonna tweet that now.
Legitimate court counteraction. Is that the initial document?
Verdicts and regulations repealing regular order appropriations, three mills downward conversations, offers the landmark.
I know, exactly. Get it to bond.
A partridge in a pear tree.
Running my 11 o'clock lunch, so.
So just focus on this one first, and you're going to go outside immediately after the culture and ask more questions. I can see both of you in front. I don't want to take you back all the time. I want to see your face. So if you elect me now, is it there? I can stop you. I can see this. Maybe a little
This is one of these often breaks.
I would call that an accomplishment. For me, a folks bill done.
I'm keeping that for the group chat.
Okay, don't do that.
I'm just too cautious. I this early in my career. Give it 10 years.
The British are a little bit more, but then again, it's the British and they hate trans people.
Jackie Rowley position too.
Yeah, I know, man. Jackie Rowley's gonna send me an angry DM.
Okay, who put the podium so high? And my box isn't here either.
Get over here and turn it down. You go first.
No. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving and got to spend some time with friends and family. Before I begin, though, I need to acknowledge the tragedy that struck Washington just before Thanksgiving. Our National Guard was attacked on American streets, and so was our nation's generosity, compassion, and sense of security. It was wrong. It will always be wrong. So please join me in praying for the families, first responders, and every guardsman still in our capital today. Now, to the work before us in the House. Millions of Americans just returned from Thanksgiving on a holiday where they watched get more expensive every year under Joe Biden. His policies sent prices on gas, groceries, and everyday essentials through the roof. While things aren't fully back to normal, families are finally feeling relief this year because of the Republican affordability agenda. Thanksgiving costs were down 5% this year. Turkey dropped 16%, and gas prices hit a 4-year low, making it easier for families to gather. But we're not done. This week, House Republicans are taking direct aim at Washington's red tape that is crushing small businesses and draining household budgets. So think of this. Small businesses now pay nearly $14,700 per employee just to comply with federal rules. Meanwhile, families lose more than $16,000 a year to hidden regulatory taxes. And that's just unacceptable. So House Republicans are acting. Our affordability agenda will move forward with the Dump Red Tape Act and the Small Business Regulatory Reduction Act. These are real reforms to roll back Washington's overreach and put power back where it belongs. The power needs to be with the workers, with the families, and with the job creators, not with the government. Democrats created this affordability crisis. They buried families under regulations, spent trillions on pet projects, and siphoned off Americans' hard-earned money to appease their radical base. We're not letting that stand. House Republicans are actually cleaning up Bidenomics. We're ending Biden inflation and restoring an America that working families can afford to thrive again. Thank you. Mr. Nunn.
Hey, thank you very much, Chairwoman. This week we're going to be running some very important legislation, particularly dealing with the Communist Party of China. I'm so thankful for our leadership team standing up to this. And let me tell you a little bit about what's happening in the heart of the heartland, right here in Iowa. Look, I started off my career as a counterintelligence officer for 20 years. I worked directly inside China, and we saw what Communist China brought to the United States, not just in the buying of farmland, but literally sending agents to my district and pulling corn seed out of the ground so they could replicate it back home. But now they're not just growing or coming after what we grow in our fields, they're coming after what we grow in our classrooms. Most recently, a group from Des Moines Public Schools was taken on an all-expense-paid trip to be inside China. But the Chinese weren't there under the facade of friendship. They were there to collect information, to exploit, and to manipulate. They forced these kids to hand over their digital information, required them to use WeChat, an internal public server for China, started an early process of cultivation, and in the counterespionage world, we consider this source recruitment. Consistently, I've had parents across Iowa say, how is this allowed to happen? And the simple truth is, there's no law preventing it. The Chinese government is creating a series of shell organizations to recruit kids to come to China and then exploit them the moment they set down in soil inside Beijing. This has to stop. And I'm so proud of this team for helping us stand up to what the Politburo in Beijing is trying to do to kids in Des Moines, Iowa, and across our country. We have the opportunity not only to push back, but to send a strong signal that we have a friendship opportunity with China that is real, but we will not stand by while Chinese communist agents attempt to recruit kids for future exploitation. Whether it's in ag or whether it's in the classroom, we have the opportunity to say no, and this team has stood up to do it. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership.
Thank you.
$1 billion. That's how much money has been stolen from the hardworking taxpayers in my home state of Minnesota. And if that's not egregious enough, some of these taxpayer dollars have allegedly been diverted to al-Shabaab terrorists. Under the failed leadership of Tim Walz, Minnesota has become a hotbed for fraud. We knew it was bad, but now, thanks to the work of our new U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, the true size and scope of the crimes is being brought to light, finally. $250 million in the feeding our children scandal. The largest pandemic fraud case, by the way, in the country. 14 million robbed by a woman who fraudulently diagnosed Somali children with autism, then billed the taxpayer for the services that were never provided. Over 5 million stolen by individuals falsely claiming to provide housing assistance to those in need. These are just some of the fraud schemes that have been federally charged, and I want to emphasize that because our failed governor tried to claim that he's been prosecuting. He hasn't even investigated. There are even more, by the way, that are under investigation, including 80 autism clinics that are currently under investigation. Career fraud prosecutor and former acting U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Joe Thompson, said the amount of fraud, quote, takes my breath away. Even the New York Times admitted that the fraud in Minnesota is, quote, staggering in its scale and its brazenness. Between the meals, housing, and autism therapy fraud cases, 86 people have been charged. Of those 86, 78 are of Somali descent. Let me be clear, it is not racist to call out criminal behavior. And we're going to not cower to baseless labels while Minnesotans, including law-abiding Somali Americans, get robbed blind. While Tim Walz refuses to take accountability for the fraud he created and enabled, President Trump is committed to justice for the crimes against the taxpayers of Minnesota, and I am too. I want to thank Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent for launching an investigation into this important issue. Minnesotans deserve answers and accountability, and we're not going to rest until they get both. And thank God for President Trump raising this because no one was covering it. We've been sounding the alarm on this fraud for over 3 years. No one in this room and no one back at home was reporting how bad this is. Finally, because of our president raising the issue, people are talking about it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention before I left what our conference chair talked about when we started. My wife Jackie and I are praying for the family of Sarah Bergstrom as they grieve this infuriating and unfathomable loss. We're also praying for Andrew Wolf as he continues to fight for his life. These two guardsmen are heroes who answered the call to keep this city safe. Justice must be executed swiftly for this heinous and targeted act. And with that, I yield to the leader.
Thank you, Whip. Our country was shocked the day before Thanksgiving to see just a senseless, violent act of this tragedy attack on our National Guardsmen here in D.C., the West Virginia National Guardsmen that were both attacked for just doing their jobs and keeping D.C. safe. I too want to extend my prayers and sympathy to Sarah Beckstrom's family for the horrible loss of her life, and just senseless loss of life for such a young girl with great promise. And then, of course, Andrew Wolf, who is still at the hospital fighting for his life from the gunshot wounds that he suffered. And we keep him in our prayers, his family as well, and pray that he is able to recover and come back. And I know the people of West Virginia share that. The people of America share those prayers. This week we have a number of bills we're bringing to the floor to continue to address some of the problems that were created by the Biden administration that drove up inflation, that drove up higher costs. We saw so many ridiculous rules and regulations that added cost to the products we buy, our small businesses that were under attack. And so this week we're bringing a number of bills to reduce those regulatory attacks on small businesses. Giving small businesses relief also gives families relief in terms of lower costs. We're going to bring more bills that came out of the Education Committee to take on what is happening in our universities and our schools, where the Chinese Communist Party tries to move Confucius Institutes into our schools, teaching our children, trying to put communist ideas into our children in our schools. And so we're going to continue to have more transparency and prohibit that kind of money coming in from China to our schools. We're bringing the SCORE Act to give some structure. Over the years, you've seen lawsuits erode the ability for the NCAA to even police college athletics, to the point where now it's the wild, wild west. There are no rules in place, no structure. You have people that can play until they're 26 years old in college athletics. You don't have any protections for a lot of the student athletes. And so we first restore the ability for policing through the NCAA. Congress won't be doing the regulations. It will be the NCAA having the ability to police college athletics again. We also protect women's sports. We protect Olympic sports by ensuring that you have an equal number of women's sports to men's sports, that you have a minimum number of sports, so that a lot of the Olympic sports that are so important to our country, as we see the Olympics coming up here again. In many cases, our Olympians come from the college ranks, and so we protect that too. And again, just putting structure in place for what is right now wild, wild west atmosphere. And we're going to continue to work on healthcare proposals to ensure that families have choices and lower premiums. That's what Republicans care about. Democrats have never cared about that since they passed the Affordable Care Act and all the broken promises and lies that went with it. If you like what you have, you can keep it. Probably the most broken promise in all of politics, where millions of families lost the good health care plans that they liked because of the Affordable Care Act. And of course, there's nothing affordable about the Affordable Care Act. All we've seen is increased cost, 80% premium increases. Democrats just concerned about bailing out insurance companies who get record profits, while families see higher premiums because of that failed law. What we want to do is give families options, lower premiums for families. And again, we've brought some bills to the floor already. We're going to keep bringing bills to the floor to do those two things, to lower premiums for families and give them options so that they can get what's best for their families. They don't have to be enforced into a plan that the government tells them they have to be in, that's too expensive for them and doesn't work for their family. They can buy whatever they want that makes sense for them and for their family. So we're going to continue to work on that too as we move an aggressive agenda, and that agenda is led by our Speaker, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Leader, this leadership team, Colonel Nunn, for being here with us this morning. There is a lot going on, and we want to give you some updates on things. I hope everybody had a blessed Thanksgiving. It is true that our hearts were heavy, of course, with Sarah and Andrew, these two selfless National Guardsmen who were senselessly attacked while they volunteered for service to defend the rest of their fellow Americans, and they literally took bullets for it. And so our prayers are with Andrew as he recovers, and our hearts and prayers are with the family of Sarah. It reminds us that freedom isn't free, and some people make the ultimate sacrifice so the rest of us can have that. You know, I was reminding our conference this morning, 1789, our first president, George Washington, was the first to issue a national day of thanksgiving and prayer, a proclamation. And he declared that because the Congress requested it of him. And of course, Washington was the first and best person to do that, to start the tradition. And he wrote famously in his proclamation, he said, it is the duty of all of us, it is our duty to acknowledge the blessings of God, to be grateful for what he's done for our country and all of us individually, and to humbly implore his protection and favor. It's never been more important to do that, and it's a great reminder. Thanksgiving is a uniquely American holiday, as we know, and it's a great time to sit around the table and be reminded of those blessings, and chief among them is the freedom that we enjoy, and we do not take that for granted. So it's proper, appropriate for us to acknowledge those sacrifices. Now, there's a lot going on across the country. There's a special election in Tennessee today, you may have heard, Tennessee's 7th District. I spent all day there yesterday. I think it was 10 hours and 12 events, I think. I was with Matt Van Epps, our Republican extraordinary candidate for the seat there that is open and will be filled today in the election. He's running against someone who truly is, by any objective measure, a real radical. She famously said that she hates Nashville, which is the largest city in the district, which is kind of an interesting campaign strategy, and hates country music. You know, it's Tennessee. So Matt Van Epps is an extraordinary candidate by contrast. He is a lieutenant colonel in the Tennessee Army National Guard. He's a combat veteran. He flew combat missions, deployed 8 times over to the Middle East, and dodged missiles and bullets for his country. He worked in Tennessee state government and is a highly capable, competent, calm, common-sense conservative. He's exactly what that district needs. We're excited for him, devoted husband and father, America First patriot. So I'm just, hey, if you're in Tennessee's 7th District, Nashville, and 14 counties, go vote today. It matters. Special elections are strange animals, and anything can happen. And when you're in a deep red district, sometimes people assume that the Republican, the conservative will win, and you cannot assume that because anything can happen. So we encourage everybody to go out there and make that happen. The people are fired up. I was there and really enjoyed the energy there. We're going to see that across the country next week as we go into this very important midterm election next year. I mean, in all the weeks ahead. And as we go into that election, remembering again how important all of this is. And as we put some posters up here to remind you and remind all of ourselves what an extraordinary run we've had in the 119th Congress. Now, in spite of the fact that we had razor-thin majority, I mean, it many times, as you know, 1 or 2 vote margin, we still have had one of the most consequential Congresses in the great history of this extraordinary nation. And you know, if you look at what has been accomplished for the first 10 months of this term, this year, the 119th Congress, this new administration, you could stack that up against any Congress in history. I think it's probably in the top 5 in terms of marquee landmark achievements. And, you know, part of our, both a blessing and a curse is we did so much of it in the one big beautiful bill, the Working Families Tax Cut. There's so much to talk about. It's as if it just got brushed aside. But the component pieces of that is some of the most nation-shaping, productive, pro-growth policies that have ever occurred to help all Americans. And we look forward to all the provisions of that bill being implemented beginning really in earnest in the first part of the year. And so the first quarter, second quarter will be a very different scenario. But we're excited to go through that. We can't fix everything overnight. And the Biden-Harris administration, as we said so many times, in 4 years really destroyed almost every metric of public policy. Don't go flip a switch to do that. It takes some time. And we've been working earnestly and around the clock to do that, to work on solutions, to solve all those problems, and to make government more efficient and effective and responsive. Republicans have been delivering and working to bring down costs for American families, to fix the Democrats' broken health care system, and to rid our streets of violent criminals and dangerous illegal aliens. All this has been our goal since January, and we've been delivering. And as the year comes to an end, we started to reflect upon what we've done in that first 10 months and ultimately the first 12 months, and it's really something. The Working Families Tax Cut, let me just tell you some of the components of that, because people seem to have forgotten. It was a permanent extension of the 2017 tax cuts, which is collectively, it's the biggest tax cut in U.S. history. Had we not passed the big bill, we would have had a $5 trillion tax increase on all hardworking American families as that expired in December. It was a marquee achievement. We also in that included permanent estate tax relief extensions. We had landmark Medicaid program reforms, which the CBO has said is going to save $185 billion and reduce premiums on everybody for their health care. We expanded the SNAP work requirements to get ineligible recipients off, young able-bodied men with no dependents or health problems. They shouldn't be riding the wagon, and they won't anymore. In the bill, we increased border enforcement and funding, generational investment in those things, and it's worked because guess what? The border is sealed. We don't have all these illegals coming across the border anymore. We included no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, increased standard deduction for seniors, free tax savings accounts for every child born in America, which we'll be announcing at the White House in an event this afternoon. Business tax provisions to incentivize investments and innovation. That's all in the bill and much more. We codified 67 of President Trump's America First executive orders so far, and there are many more to come. We repealed Biden-era regulations with 23 Congressional Review Act resolutions. Now, this is important, too. We've been making history along the way over the last 10 months. In the entire time that CRA's, Congressional Review Acts, have been part of the law, only 20 had been signed into law since the inception of that instrument. This year alone, we have already passed 23 of those out of the House, and 16 of those have been signed into law. That's a big thing. We've restored regular order to the appropriations process, and y'all know how what a big thing that was. A goal of mine since I became Speaker a little over 2 years ago was to restore regular order, because instead of governing by an omnibus before Christmas, which is no way to do stewardship, we wanted to get back to 12 separate appropriations bills. And as you saw, when we reopened government, one of the things the President signed was 3 regular order appropriations bills signed into law. What a marquee achievement. We had agriculture, legislative branch, military construction, VA bill signed into law, and both chambers and the appropriators are working right now to put the next bills, get them prepared, and get them enacted and signed into law. We've also, in the last 10 months, defunded wasteful spending through rescissions, billions of dollars there. We passed and signed into law the Genius Act, the bipartisan landmark crypto legislation. We passed and signed into law the Lake and Riley Act, the Halt Fentanyl Act, and the Take It Down Act. And the House has passed the SAVE Act, the Illegitimate Court Counter Action Act, Protecting American Energy Production Act, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, Fix Our Forest Act, the Ticket Act, Unlocking Our Domestic LNG Potential Act, American Entrepreneurs First Act, Stop Illegal Entry Act, Made in America Defense Act. I could go on and on and on. Remember, these are just the top lines. The House has passed 331 pieces of legislation this year that will directly improve the quality of life for millions of American families. And that's a lot to be thankful for. By the way, just this week, as was mentioned earlier, President Trump is signing into law the IRS Math and Taxpayer Help Act. It received little fanfare in the media, but it's a bill that will provide taxpayers fairer treatment when corresponding with the IRS regarding tax returns, and that's a big thing as we go into tax season in the first quarter. It's the type of work that House Republicans are doing here every day in these halls. We're working on real solutions to real problems for our constituents. As I mentioned, the Working Families Tax Code, if we were just to go through every provision of that bill that's going to make life easier and safer and more affordable for American families, we would be here until Christmas. So I'm not going to do that for you. But we're not going to rest on our laurels, okay? The American people delivered a clear mandate last fall for us to fix everything. And we're going to sprint through the finish line next November. We'll be adding a new member. I expect Matt Van Epps is going to win that election today. And we will bring our freshman class of Republicans up to the number of 36, adding another vote to that margin every single day, and we'll keep working. We're more confident than ever that the Working Families Tax Cut provisions are implemented as that happens in the first quarter, second quarter. American families begin to receive financial relief. Republicans are not just going to hold on to the majority. We're going to grow it. And over the next weeks and months, House Republicans will advance legislation to continue to bring down the cost of health care for working families, to ensure our fighting force remains the most lethal and the best prepared in the world, and to fully fund the government for the upcoming fiscal year in a responsible way while maintaining good stewardship of taxpayer resources. This week, as the leader mentioned, we'll pass legislation to reduce the regulatory burden on small businesses further, to keep the Chinese Communist Party out of America's classrooms. That's a big and important endeavor. And to establish a landmark nationwide NIL framework for collegiate athletics and empower student athletes to maximize their college experience. Despite the unrelenting stream of palace intrigue stories that fill the pages of your publications, House Republicans remain united and focused on delivering results for our constituents. That's how we've gotten this done. That's how we'll continue to do it. And that will be happening in earnest in the weeks and months to come. So we'll take a few questions if you have. Okay, you're so eager. I got to go.
We have a relationship at this point. First off, happy Thanksgiving as well. But quick question: what are your thoughts about and not related to the Minnesota welfare scandal, but specifically, what are your thoughts about President Trump calling Governor Walz retarded?
Well, look, that's not the word that I would choose. I think his reaction was probably a spontaneous one to the enormous amount of fraud that was announced there. We're thinking it may be, could be $2 billion. Congressman Emmer, of course, represents that state, and it is an outrage. And we're told that this was funding terrorist organizations in Somalia, and so it's a lot to look into. I mean, all of us, when we heard the news, we reacted in different ways, and you know, that's not the word I would choose, but I think everybody understands how absurd and crazy that is, and how Congress has an immediate obligation to look into it, and the administration is as well, and we're going to get down to the bottom of that. Governor Walz appears to have a lot to answer for, so it was a really stupid thing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. You talked a lot about your accomplishments, and one you didn't mention is the SAVE Act, which the House has passed twice. It's still awaiting action in the Senate for some reason. But many are still asking when an in-person, same-day, hand-counted paper ballot measure will be passed, and will that be done in time for the 2026 election?
Yeah, I've been asking that myself. I think that would be a really important measure to eliminate you know, fraud in elections. And there is some element of fraud in every election. We all know that. And we have a duty as lawmakers to prevent as much of that as is humanly possible. The SAVE Act has been a big priority of ours. I think I did mention it in the list, but it was so long. I certainly intended to. It's an important measure, and we would certainly love to get that signed into law. We need a little help in the Senate, of course, to do that. We don't have control over all elections. The states in our system, as you know, have a lot of responsibility over that, and that is federalism. We support that. The states have that in their jurisdiction of authority. We don't want to federalize all elections because that could open up a whole other can of worms. But with regard to federal elections, at least, you know, elections for Congress and Senate, we do have some say. And so the SAVE Act would be an effort to ensure that we eliminate as much fraud as possible. I've obviously been a big champion. I was a co-author of it before I became Speaker. We've been working on this, and we'll continue to try to get it done. So it's a big priority. Yes,
Mr.
Speaker.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Elisa Stefanik wrote on social media this morning that you are protecting the deep state by not including a provision in the Intelligence Authorization Act. What's your reaction to this claim, and why is House Republican leadership not united on this?
Well, all of that is false. I don't exactly know why Elise won't just call me. I texted her yesterday. She's upset that one of her provisions is not being made, I think, into the NDAA. I explained to her on a text message as soon as I heard this yesterday. I was campaigning in Tennessee, and I wrote her and I said, what are you talking about? This hasn't even made it to my level. The way regular order works is, and I think she should know this, we'll be talking about it, I'm sure, today. The way this works is that it has to go through committees of jurisdiction if it will be attached to the NDAA. And this provision that she's working on, I think, is under the jurisdiction of judiciary. And so there's a four corners engagement and agreement that's required. You all know how this works. The two chairs and the two ranking members of the committees of jurisdiction, which would be judiciary and the House and Senate, all have to agree, or at least 3 out of 4 have to agree. It's typically unanimous to make sure that it makes it onto the bill. Well, in this case, I found out last night, this wasn't even on my radar, that apparently didn't happen. I haven't even talked to those chairmen. I haven't had time because I got in late last night. But apparently those four, the two chairs and the two rankers in both chambers did not agree, and so that provision was dropped out of the NDAA. It doesn't mean it can't become law or even that is a final decision. But I sent my friend Elise a text last night, and I said, can you find out what the issue was, and I'll help you resolve it. I support her provision. I mean, I would vote for it. I think it's smart. And I'm not sure exactly why it wasn't included. So I don't know why she's frustrated with me. I literally had nothing to do with it. But I'm happy to roll up my sleeves and help her. I want everybody to be successful, and we're going to try to make the bill as best it can be.
On the Caribbean boat strikes, the administration has acknowledged that there was a second strike in that attack. in September, but they have not said if there were any defenseless survivors. Should they release the video to Congress, the unedited video to Congress and to the American public? And two, if the defenseless survivors were killed, would that constitute a violation of the laws of war?
I'm not going to prejudge any of that. As you know, both of the Armed Services Committee and the Senate and the House will be having hearings on this to review, and that's their role. I have been listening. Again, I was pretty busy yesterday. Didn't follow a lot of the news, but I caught up a little bit early this morning. That my assessment of this, my understanding is that most of the people that have looked at this, at least in a preliminary review, say that the admiral who ordered the second strike thought it was necessary to complete the mission. He's a highly decorated, highly respected admiral in the Navy, and he made that call. And so, we're going to have to look at that. I'm sure Congress has a right to look at it. I don't know how much of the tape should be released because I'm not sure how much is sensitive with regard to national security and all that. I haven't had a chance to review it, so I'm not going to prejudge it. But I will say that, it's not an unprecedented thing. One of the things I was reminded of this morning is that under Barack Obama, President Obama, he had, I think, over 550 drone strikes on people who were targeted as enemies of the country, and nobody ever questioned it, okay? And secondary strikes are not unusual. It has to happen if a mission is going to be completed. So I haven't reviewed the scope of the mission. I haven't reviewed that particular strike. I don't know what went into the Admiral's decision matrix. But it's something that Congress will look at, and we'll do that in the regular process and order. I think it's very important for everybody to reserve judgment and not leap to conclusions until you have all the facts, and that's what we'll be uncovering. Yes.
Secretary Hegseth testify.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first note's a little bit self-serving. It's Giving Tuesday, and so just asking everyone to consider perhaps public television among the many worthy charities. Louisiana Public Television, one of the best.
Yes, there's a plea to give to public television for Giving Tuesday. Okay.
And then on healthcare, two of your members came out of the meeting just now and told me that it was their impression that the House Republicans are likely to get on board some kind of short-term extension for the subsidies while you work out long-term reform. They weren't members who love that idea, but they said it looks like that might be necessary. Where do you think things stand, and could something come before the House by the end of the year?
I don't know who you talked to, but they might have left early. I was up there for quite a bit today. We were talking about a lot of issues, and what I said, we didn't commit to that. What I said is, when you have, this is just practical, okay? When you have a razor-thin majority, which we have, this is not like the old days. In the old days, they had 30, 40-seat majorities, and so 4 leaders could go in a back room, create the agenda, and hoist it upon everybody and say, this is what you're doing. And if 20 or 25 people disagreed, they said, so what? Go jump in the Potomac. We're moving forward. Okay, it doesn't work that way, right? And when in an era of small margins, I literally have to get almost every person in the room on board. Now, healthcare is a very complex issue. And I don't want to point this out. Look, it is not the Republicans who broke American healthcare. Next week, we'll go into this in real detail, and I'll show you the whole timeline. The Democrats broke healthcare, okay? When they created the Unaffordable Care Act, 15 years ago, they promised you that everybody could keep your plan, keep your doctor if you want it, and that your premiums would be reduced on average by $2,500. Exactly the opposite was the truth, and premiums have risen in some cases 60, 80% over that time. They broke the system, and every time the Democrats have gone in to try to subsidize the broken system, they've spent more and more taxpayer dollars, and they've been wasted. The COVID-era subsidy only affects 7% of Americans, okay? All this hullabaloo is over 7%. Now, every American, 100% of Americans need their health care costs to come down. Republicans have ideas to do that. Now, what I've got to do is build consensus deliberately around the best ideas, and we've been working on that. The majority leader has been quarterbacking this effort with the chairman of the committees of jurisdiction, with the Docs Caucus, and with individual members who this is their passion, and they really spend a lot of time thinking and working on it. And we're pulling those ideas together, and there will be a Republican response to this, okay? So I can't project in advance what that will be, because I don't know what the consensus is in that room. But you will see our sleeves rolled up and that work being done in earnest this week as we bring all that together. I told everybody we are going to respond. We understand the need of bringing down healthcare costs and at the same time raising access to care and quality of care. The Republican Party is the party that can do that. The Democrats have demonstrated for 15 years. They broke the system and they keep doubling down on the broken system, okay? Hey, and guess what? If you love your Obamacare, you'll get to keep it, okay? We're going to improve the system for Americans, and we have good ideas to do it. We have a lot of thoughtful people working on this. and we'll be pulling it together. So no, the answer is no, I did not project any outcome of this morning. We were talking about the various ideas, and we're working right now. People are very passionate about this, and they should be, because their constituents understand the necessity of it. So we'll keep doing that. Thank you all so much, and be more later today.
The Tigers. Do you know that the Somali Autism Society, they actually work on helping Somalis get properly diagnosed? They're with the Somali.